given scenario, you need to transfer generated PDF files from a local folder to an FTP server, and in addition to that, download files from the FTP server to a local server, and then once downloaded, move those files into an archive folder. You think, let's automate it, and let's take it a step further and use Python. Luckily, AIP Solutions has got you covered. Visit aipsolutions.tech today and let us know about your automation needs. So, you decide to use FTP and not SSH or SFTP because of two reasons. One, this is all your private environment, and two, these files are not sensitive. So in this video, I demonstrate how to download and upload files to an FTP server using FTP-lib in Python, and we take into consideration timeout errors and how to circumvent this. Follow along and let's begin. Okay, let's look at our FTP server. Presently, in our top directory, we have a few PDF files here. Our objective will be to download these files into our directory here on our local server. And once downloaded, then archive them into this archive folder. We are going to target this upload folder with files we upload to the server. So first we download these PDF files and file them away into an archive folder. Then I will demonstrate how to upload to the upload folder. Okay, let's get started with the code. We will be working with the FTP lib, so let's import that specifically FTP. So from FTP lib, import FTP. And let's declare some variables. We will set our host name to the FTP server name. The username will be the FTP username, and the password will be the FTP password. We're also going to specify the folder where we want to download to and upload from in our folder path variable. And don't forget to add the R notation for raw string literals. Okay. Now to actually log into the server, we will call the FTP with our host name and assign that to a variable FTP. Then we call login on that FTP with our specified username and password. And the way we can view the directory listing is calling nlst. And within our print statement to output it to our screen. Okay, so we declare our variables, we log in, and then we print a directory listing on the FTP server. So if we run this, we should get our folders and files on the FTP server. Okay, great. So let's go over downloading a single file. Let's pick on PDF 115. So we declare file name variable and reference the pdf-115.pdf file. Then we use this snippet of code to actually download it. So we open the reference file name in binary mode as file. Then we call retch binary with retr and the file name with file.write to download it. I'm not referencing any location, so it will download to the same directory that we are in. So if we run this as is, our PDF 115 file should be in the same directory as our Python script. We can see our file has been downloaded here. So, question. What if we want to specify a certain directory? Uh, say this folder, for instance, and instead of downloading one file, let's download all PDF files on the FTP server. Let's go over how to accomplish this. So let's get all the files on the FTP server as opposed to one file that we know the name of. We can accomplish this by first, let's get rid of the hard-coded file name. Next, instead of printing out a directory listing, let's assign that to a variable. That will be a list of the files on the server, and let's call that files. So now we can reference each file within our files variable. Okay, but first let's take this snippet here to download the file and make it a function. Let's call it download file and it takes two parameters. The first is the remote file path, which is the path on the FTP server, and the local file path, which is the path on our local server. So we open the local file path and write to the local file path the remote file path location. Then we print the file with its name and the words downloaded successfully. Okay, so we have our function and we have our list of files. So let's loop over our list of files. For each file in files, and let's target just PDF files with this code. If file.lower ends with .pdf. Then let's set our variable needed to call our download function. Our remote file path will be the actual file name, which is referenced by file. Our local file path will be our folder path directory and that file name. So we merge that with os path join function. And you can see OS is not recognized, so we need to import OS. All good. Okay, so now let's call our function with the variables. So we get a listing of our files in our directory and assign it to files. We loop over these files, and if the file ends in .pdf, then we set our variables. The remote path is just the file name, and the local path is our folder path plus our file name. Then we call our download function with those variables. So let's check our directory. There are no files. Now run our code. Okay, we're getting our printouts that each file is being downloaded successfully. Okay, so we downloaded a few, and after a while, we get this timeout error that states a connection attempt failed because the connected party did not properly respond after a period of time. Now, the FTP server that I am using does this, even if I adjust the timeout settings. So I will show you how to deal with this in a different way. But let's see if our files downloaded prior to this error message and success. We have files in our directory. So we have our code to download PDF files from our FTP server to a target directory. But this FTP server randomly disconnects with timeout errors. In the middle of a download, it will just disconnect. So let's see if we can catch this with a try and exception clause. In here, let's put the code below within a try block. Then make an accept blocked with a connection and timeout error. Then print upload fails with the error message. So when this happens, we lose connection to the FTP server. So we have to reconnect to the server with this code. So instead of just manually reconnecting it, let's make it a function. Call it connect underscore FTP. And it takes the parameters of hostname, username, and password. It will connect to the FTP host name, and attempt to authenticate with the username and password. And then just return FTP. So now we just call the connect FTP with our same parameters we defined earlier. And we continue in our loop. We can add another exception for any other type of error message and just print it out. Okay. Now when this timeout error happens, it fails on the current file it is processing. So we need to retry that same file. So before our try, let's make a while statement. While true, and on completion it will break the loop. So if we hit an exception, it will reconnect and retry the same file because we are still within the while true loop. And once the file has processed, we break the loop. Okay, let's test this. So here we can see we caught an exception because our upload failed printed. But we reconnected successfully and resumed that download. Okay, great. That's what we wanted. But what if we want to move the file from the current directory into an archive folder once the download is successful? So let's add this line after our download file function is called. This is a rename function, but it functions as moving the file. We specify the original file location in our remote file path, and we say the new location, which is archive, plus the file name referenced by just file. So let's test this. Delete all of our files we downloaded. So there are 29 files on our FTP, but one is the FTP quota file, so 28 PDF files. Let's run this again. And our files are coming in now. No exception this time, and we have all 28 files. Now let's look at the FTP server. Refresh this, and all our files are gone. So let's look at our archive folder, refresh this, and great, 28 PDF files, success. Okay, so we have coded files to download to a local directory and archive to a different folder on the FTP server. We have accounted for timeout errors and attempt to reconnect and resume the file download. Now let's look at uploads. Okay, so we will target the same PDF files we downloaded in our target directory and now upload those to a different upload folder on the FTP. So how do we do that? So our files directory was pointing to our directory listing on the FTP server. Let's change that to a listing of the files on our local server. We already have the variable folder path where our files are located, and we assign those files variables to point to this path using os.list directory. We follow the same model to target only PDFs and account for timeout/connection errors. But let's create an upload file function. Under our download file function, create a new function called upload file. It will take the same parameters of remote file path and local file path. We will use the similar code, but this time we will open the file to read bytes, and we use ftp.store binary with store and reference the remote path and the file name. Then we print the file name and the text uploaded successfully. So files variable could contain the listing of our local files. We cycle through these files and target PDFs. Leave the try and accept clause to deal with timeout issues that can occur on uploads as well. So let's change our remote file path to be in our upload directory. This will be where we want our files to be uploaded to. Our local file path will be the same location, which is our target directory and the file name. Instead of our download file function, we call our upload file function with the same name parameters, and we delete our rename function. We change this to download. Actually, no, this should be upload because we are uploading. And we call connect FTP again in the event our connection times out again. And print the other exception. And everything else should be the same. So let's check our directory and then run this code. As you can see, our files are being uploaded. We might get a timeout error here. And yes, we do. But you can see it still resumes after a reconnection. And it completed. So let's check our FTP again. And our files are there. Okay, great. So let's go over everything we are doing here. From the FTP lib, we import FTP and we import OS. We define our variables that we use to connect to the FTP server, as well as our folder path and where the target files will be located. We directly initiate the connection to the FTP server with these two lines, referencing the host name and username and password. But we also define a function using the same commands to initiate a connection with one line of code to deal with reconnection issues. We have a download file function defined where we take in a remote file path and a local file path parameters. Once completed, we print the file name along with download successful. Similarly, we have an upload file function that takes in similar parameters. We perform the upload and print the file name along with uploaded successfully. Now we pass a list to a variable which can be a list of files on the FTP server or a list of files locally. We loop over the files and target just PDF files and have a while true statement. True is always true, so this will be an infinite loop and will only break on successful completion of an upload or download. Within our try statement, we then specify our remote file path where we target on the FTP server. We specify our local file path where we specify the location on the local server, and we call our upload or download function with these parameters. This FTP server has random timeout errors, so we call an exception on the connection error and timeout error, where we print failed with the original error message. We then call our connect FTP function to reconnect to the FTP server and continue on. which this continuation would try to reprocess the file it failed on because it's still true and only breaks on non-exceptions. We account for any other exception where it would just print it out. But in the event another exception occurs, it doesn't continue and it should just error out. And that is pretty much it. And that's all she wrote, folks. Hopefully you found this video helpful and you can use this code to build up on in your applications. Please like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching. This has been brought to you by AIP Solutions.